cloud. Perfect. Sorry to those who just missed the agenda, but we're going to keep it moving. At least I remembered to record. So, anyone here have a CrossFit background? Maybe heard of the mobility coach and physical therapist Kelly Starrett, or the book Becoming a Supple Leopard. In Becoming a Supple Leopard, which is a mobility book by the host of Mobility WOD. If you guys have ever heard of Mobility WOD on Instagram, that is Kelly Starrett. He sets the scene in the preface of the book with the leopard. The leopard, lying in the savannah, sees its target. The leopard may stalk the animal, but when it's ready to run to its target, it goes for it and it gets it. What did the leopard not do? The leopard did not foam roll in preparation, and the leopard certainly did not worry about tearing its hamstring. If you observe your pets, you may see that mobility seems to be built into their day. I know my couch has a lot of scratch marks from my cats stretching their fingers on my couch and clawing at it. And we have these beautiful GIFs that I hope are working for you guys, but they aren't working. Oh, apparently when I click it, it works. There we go. I should know these tricks. But we got the dog doing its up dog and down dog sequence here. We've got the cat stretching your legs. You see your animals do this throughout their day. So if mobility was better built into your day, would you be more physically prepared for the demands of your workouts and your life? Being a supple leopard means having baseline mobility that keeps you ready for any movement or task, positions that are mechanically sound and stable. So when you get to a position, you feel comfortable there, you're able to do something in that position. Adaptability, which is ability to shift from strength to speed to stillness seamlessly, which is what that leopard can do that many of us often don't feel like we can. My example here is when I joined a house league softball team, and the first game of the year, 3 people ran to first base and they all grabbed their hamstring in pain because they felt something pop or something. Those people were not adaptable that night. And lastly, self-maintenance habits. So your body stays prepared rather than needing constant fixing. But how do we improve our mobility and how do we keep it? Is stretching the only way? And even though I love stretching and I'm relatively biased, a number of fitness researchers make the case to see flexibility retired as a major component of our fitness regimes. Why? They say stretching doesn't matter as much as we think. So what do we say? First, let's start with some common language explained and some definitions. We often hear flexibility and mobility kind of used interchangeably, but flexibility is a measurement of our tissues to lengthen passively. So with the help of gravity or with the help of us moving it into position, which I'll show you in a second, but here we see the example of the banded hamstring stretch. Mobility is our ability to actively move the joint through a full controlled range of motion and actually use it in our day-to-day life. So this requires active flexibility, which involves stability in the joint, motor control, and strength at the end range of motion. So while I'll explain the end range in a second, because I think that term can be confusing, I do want to show the difference between the lying leg lift and the banded hamstring stretch so that you guys can see. Except I actually don't have eyes on my own video. Let's see, where am I? Okay, there I am. So here I have my band, I'm on the floor, and I'm gonna pull my hamstring while my other heel stays down. Notice how far I get here. This is with the help of me pulling it into position. This is flexibility. Now, when I go to take my own leg up, notice how it does not get as far. There's about that much in between my active and my passive. And some of you guys, if you did the same test, feel free to do it. No one can see you. Come on down to the ground. You may actually have a bigger difference if you don't work on your active mobility. I try and work on my active mobility, so I'm okay with that bit of difference. So really quickly, I feel like talking about active flexibility and what it involves can be a little confusing. And when we talk about end range, basically our muscles work best in the mid range. So if we think about our biceps being really stretched or squeezed, they're not their strongest in those positions. So you may notice in like a bicep curl, you have trouble starting it, or you have trouble absolutely finishing it and really squeezing, but in the middle, you seem okay. The same could be said for a pull-up or a chin-up. You have trouble starting it, you have trouble getting absolutely to the top, but you could rep out this short pull-up for a long time. So end range is where our muscles struggle and an area that we need to work on if we want to be able to access our full range of motion. So in short, we can have good mobility without flexibility, and improving mobility requires more than just flexibility. So hopefully you're all with me still on that. Here is why we should care. In general, the same way strength is, the same way cardio is, it is a use it or lose it item that our body has. If we're not actively working on keeping our flexibility and our mobility, we are going to lose it. And we're going to notice it in ways such as we can't reach those scratches on our back the way that we used to. We can't turn our head as well to see if there's any cars in our blind spot. We can't reach for the top shelf the way we used to reach for the top shelf. And even more seriously, in terms of lower body and hips, we may notice that we can't pick up our legs the same way that we used to. And now we're at greater risk of falls. So main areas of loss of flexibility include our shoulders, our ankles, and our hips. And if we're looking at this graph on the side, we see that hips, lower body typically reduces more than upper body in terms of our flexibility as we get older. One thing I will say is that when I was doing my master's, we did a lot of research on older adults, comparing them to young adults, mid-age adults, and we often looked at ankle dorsiflexion, which is our ability to bring our feet up towards the sky. That is something that gets reduced with like 10 to 15 degrees, and it's already not a lot if you look at it. So that really increases our risk of falls and things like that. Specifically, that ankle dorsiflexion is also really important for our squat pattern. And that brings us to why we should care at Limitless Performance. So at Limitless Performance, we don't just care about reaching the top shelf and things like that. We care about having really good performance in the gym. And at LP, many movements we do require more mobility than a traditional gym goer's machine routine. So here we see two exercises that require lots of flexibility, whether we really think about it or not. So in terms of our bench press, if we do not have enough external rotation at the shoulder joint, we may feel like our elbows can't really stay tucked in. We may feel like our shoulder is rolling forward at the bottom. We may have pain at the front of the shoulder, and we may not be able to keep our shoulder blades squeezed together, our scapular retraction, and then we actually won't be as strong in the movement because that really helps our chest so that it can just press and keep things stable. So when we don't have good mobility through our shoulders, our bench press suffers, and this can lead to discomfort in the front shoulder and bicep long term, which is one reason why we're doing the wall arm slide tomorrow for our Fit Life scorecard. From there, we have the example of the wall ball. For a successful wall ball, we need ankle flexibility, like we just discussed, so that our chest stays more upright and our hips have an easier time in flexion. We need hip flexibility for appropriate depth, and we need shoulder mobility to throw the ball to the target. So poor mechanics here may make our lower backs feel tight and our throw and catch clunky, which would waste energy if we were in competition. And in competition, some of our reps may not even count. So here we see that ankle dorsiflexion mobility assessment that we're going to be doing tomorrow, as well as the squat assessment, which we will also do tomorrow. So we're about to talk about stability, but I'd like to see that you guys are still with me in the chat. So if you're still paying attention, you're learning some cool stuff, give me a thumbs up. Thank you. I've got 1, 2, perfect. So now, really quickly, let's talk about how stability ties in. So we've talked a lot about having that range that we need and being able to access it. Stability helps us access those ranges of motion. And stability is our ability to maintain control of a joint or series of joints. Because all of our muscles are considered to be connected by connective tissue networks, also called fascia, we want to consider stability across many joints working together and how that will impact our performance. So a good example here is that sometimes we think we're having an issue with one muscle, but when we go get a professional assessment from a physio, we find out we have to work on something completely different. I feel like a lot of runners experience this with their knees. Usually their knees are not the issue. It's something like their hip or their ankle or their foot, and then it's working its way across the chain, right? So this is how tests like the Bunky test that we're going to be doing on Friday tie into our body's functional performance. It shows our ability to control our body across different muscle connections at different joint actions. In this mobility and stability conversation, I really like this balcony analogy. So I know my balcony has like an area past the railing. I don't want to go past that railing. One time my cat made it out of the safe zone in the railing. He snuck under and I was like, I am not going to get him out there. I actually couldn't find his treats. I shook medicine and then he came running back. But you can think of mobility like your balcony and stability as where your railing is. So if my mobility is taking me a certain level, stability takes me to the safest spot. So if I have quite a bit of mobility and flexibility past my railing, I probably am not going to use it. I'm probably not going to feel safe if I'm not doing it. So stability is almost like that active flexibility component that just ties it all together. You go where your railing is. You go where you feel safe to use it. So I alluded to an article talking about retiring flexibility from the major components of fitness. When I was a grad student, my advisor hated stretching, and he actually was sending us articles back and forth, and we were sending him articles back and forth, and he was like, I can't believe a bunch of grad students can't see the research on stretching. But later, one of his favorite researchers actually wrote a really good critique about how a lot of the flexibility research is kind of done wrong. So the jury's a little bit out on that, but specifically in this article by Jeff Nuzzo, some conclusions were made, such as a lot of time and resources are dedicated to stretching by the general population, as well as by professionals in researching, testing, and administering flexibility protocols. For example, in police testing, they do the sit and reach test as something that might point to them being better police officers, better able to do that job. However, of the majority of the general population, people are already not engaging in enough cardiorespiratory fitness and muscular strengthening activities, which have far greater benefits to your health than flexibility training alone. So one thing that research looks at is all-cause mortality. So the likelihood that something is going to take you out early, like disease, like sickness. When we look at people who are very flexible, they don't have better all-cause mortality. But you know who does? People with high VO2 maxes and people with high grip strength. One last argument for retiring flexibility from being a major component of our fitness regimes is that when we engage in certain cardiorespiratory fitnesses like swimming, as well as when training our muscles in full ranges of motion with weights, we will improve our flexibility without stretching, with other health benefits that follow. So while that was a good article and something to consider, I think at Limitless Performance, we need to consider that we already make time for our cardiorespiratory fitness and our strength training, unlike many members of the general population. So you can pat yourself on the back for that. Actually, the majority of you guys are better at your cardio than I am, so I'm working on that. We are people engaging in activities that require more flexibility, so targeted mobility work makes a lot of sense for us. And this article in itself can be a reminder that what we do in the gym is going to help us with our flexibility. We just need to make sure that when we train, we don't go too heavy where we're cutting our range of motion and that we're working on those exercises that encourage a big stretch with load. So at this point, I cannot emphasize enough, using weights in a full range of motion is flexibility training, and you will get more flexible and keep your flexibility when you train with full range. And technically, certain exercises are better at helping our mobility than others. When we do our lat pullover, we are working our lats in their most stretched position. So while sometimes, you're doing your cleans and things like that, these positions don't feel like they're going to get better. It's because they're not really working your muscles through the stretch to help you improve your mobility. Just because you're trying for that catch doesn't mean it's going to get better. But when you're including exercises that work on that flexibility that muscle is going to need, that can really help. So lat pullover is one example of an exercise that's really going to improve your mobility. Nordic curls and sissy squats and reverse Nordic curls. So the middle photo is a reverse Nordic. Nobody likes when Adam throws those in, I find, but those exercises have big bang for your buck in terms of stretching you and making you stronger at the same time. And it's the same with the Romanian deadlift. The Romanian deadlift is a great exercise, especially when you take it past where you typically take your Romanian deadlift, for stretching your hamstrings with load. So you're getting stronger and more flexible at the same time. So, like I said, targeted flexibility can be really important for those restrictions that you might be having, that you're noticing in your wall balls, you're noticing in your bench or your overhead press. So what types of flexibility training do work? Static stretching works as long as you're holding for longer than 30 seconds. So take that 30 seconds seriously. And technically, it works best when done for even 45 to 60 seconds. Dynamic stretching is done when we move through a stretch. We know these, we do a lot of them in our warm-ups, at least 3 to 5 repetitions in a full range of motion. Ballistic stretching, we don't do a lot of, and technically it is one that's like, you're slightly more likely to get injured. So I understand why we don't include it. I don't do a lot of ballistic stretching. This is when you use speed in a stretch. So when you see people swinging their legs back and forth, that is a ballistic stretch. It does work. It just comes with that little caveat of like, you should really be warm for it and have already done other stretches before you do it. That's something that's usually done for more than 8 repetitions. PNF, also called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, is a technique that uses active flexibility during passive stretching, usually done for 3 to 5 reps. It typically looks like, if I'm going to stretch my finger right now, I am going to stretch my finger, and then I'm going to press back against the stretch a little bit, and then I'm going to keep stretching. If anyone's ever done fascial stretch therapy, PNF is a huge part of it, and it's often something used in physio. PNF is great for helping you bridge that flexibility with mobility, because now you're being active in that range of motion that you're trying to get better in. Lastly, as mentioned, In terms of flexibility training, if we're training with full ranges of motion, we will improve our flexibility and mobility, or at least keep it, depending on the exercise. And this final note is important. It can sometimes seem like a lot. To improve flexibility, the muscle groups should be stretched 3 times a week and preferably 2 sets in each session. So if you don't notice your flexibility getting better, sometimes you can think about how often you're actually stretching that muscle group and think that you might need to multiply that by 3. So not once a week for your muscles to get more flexible. You have to be a bit more consistent. So sometimes it's tough if we're, only hitting. I mean, we do a good job, especially in this block, of like doing some full body activities and stretching everything, but we do have to be consistent with it for sure. Make sure we show up to class on time and really be intentional when we do our mobility work. So, one thing I didn't really include in our agenda, but I wanted to touch on is, well, how does stretching even work? What's happening to our muscles for our flexibility to improve? This is a question I'm posing to you guys because I know when I was young, I thought maybe the muscles actually got longer. Like the same way your muscles build out for bulk, maybe they also get longer. I don't know. Have you guys thought that? Is that what you guys think is going on? It's a good question. Well, flexibility is actually all about your nervous system. Yes, Jesus. We think maybe they just get longer. They don't actually get longer. Our muscles are already long. Who would have thought? Our brain and our nervous system just won't let us use that range, mostly because we don't use it in the first place. Our muscles work happiest in their mid ranges of motion. Most activities we do work in our mid ranges of motion. So we don't really need all the flexibility that we might have in our muscle, and we don't use it. But your muscles are stretchy, your tendons are springy, they got more. They just don't let you use it. So basically, I have this little photo. I'm not going to explain it, but we see things in the muscle that are sensory. So sensors that are sensing for stretch and tension, and they go back to the spinal cord, mostly communicate with the spinal cord, might communicate with the brain a bit, and then they come back and say, let's be more flexible. But this takes time and effort for it to actually become longer. But basically, what we have is already there. Our nervous system just doesn't let us use it without a lot of consistent effort. But this is one reason why fascial stretch therapy recommends that your stretching be relatively pain-free. And I know when I learned foam rolling techniques, we were told not to make them more than a 5 out of 10 on the pain scale. I know some of you guys probably roll into like farther pain than that. And technically, when you induce pain, you also reduce pain. There is a mechanism there that's also working. But technically, for your foam rolling to be effective, you just want to apply pressure, which your muscles sense, and then they relax. You don't have to make it super painful if you are, okay? And one of my favorite things to say to people is that you cannot relax if you are tense. If a part of our nervous system using our muscles to be in a more relaxed state means that we need to relax, we're going to try and relax. Touching on foam rolling, some of you may be wondering if foam rolling improves your mobility. Since foam rolling is applying pressure to the same sensory mechanisms in the muscle that relaxes the muscles, it will relax the muscles, but only short term. Foam rolling can be a valuable tool for tight muscles and knots, but foam rolling alone has not been shown to improve flexibility. I think if we think about it, if stretching kind of acts on those sensory receptors, reduces tension, it's also you moving into new ranges of motion, trying for new ranges of motion. It makes sense that that improves flexibility, But when we foam roll, we don't take ourselves close to the end range, right? We are just rolling. So it makes sense that it does not improve flexibility, but it can be a tool that you use in conjunction with your flexibility routine to help. So, in conclusion, mobility is very important for our aging process and for our optimal performance in our workouts. If you are feeling restricted in certain movements at the gym, consistency in a flexibility routine for those specific restrictions will improve that movement. Stretching 3 times per week in whichever fashion you prefer is effective, but ensuring you use full ranges of motion in your workouts and active flexibility techniques will help you notice the benefits of your flexibility program more than just holding your stretches, basically. So with that said, this week we will be completing the air squat assessment, ankle dorsiflexion assessment, wall arm slide assessment, and bunkie test to determine if our mobility is up to par with our needs. If you do not pass various assessments, please reach out for a private mobility session with yours truly if you would like to know more about what you should do for your mobility. With that said, I offer fascial stretch therapy. Fascial stretch therapy is an assisted stretching technique that uses the principles of nervous system regulation, fascial lines, which we touched on a little bit when we talked about stability, and stretching to reduce pain, remove restrictions, and help our bodies feel loose and limber for better movement. When we do fascial stretch therapy, I always try and make sure you walk away with homework to your specific needs. So while you could book in for like a personal training and just work on mobility, fascial stretch therapy is nice because you mostly get to lay there, do a bit of that PNF, like you just kind of breathe and press and then you exhale and I stretch you. It's kind of nice because it's a pretty relaxed routine for you and you get the benefits of mobility without having to do as much. It's also something that people notice lasts for a little bit longer, and a part of that is the manual therapy technique. Whereas when you're stretching yourself, you usually have to do a little bit more of it to see the same results. So with that said, it is now time for the question and answer period. I would say maybe we raise our hands or write the question in the chat.
Sorry, I'm looking for the place to raise my hand. Maybe I should just ask the question, Ree.
Just ask, just
Yeah,
ask.
yes. I think it's a small enough group. So why the air quote or the quotes on knots? So what is a knot? Can
We're
we
all
get
trying to figure that out still.
really? So obviously it's not that the muscle itself is in a knot, I'm guessing, but it must be some sort of local inflammation that happens for some reason, or maybe tightness. Is it tightness? Is it inflammation? Is it
Yeah, basically, knots are very hard to study
yeah.
because it doesn't seem because the muscle basically is not actually knotted up. It is that that area is just basically having a response, and we don't really understand exactly why that happens yet. So the last time I went to a certification course, it was called Barbell Rehab. I asked that same question, and he's giving the same answer. Like, we just don't know enough. There's a lot of kind of like talk about what a knot could be, and a lot of like massage therapists and stuff like that talk about it in absolute terms, like, oh no, that's a knot and we're rubbing it out right now. But really what's happening is that when you go see a manual therapist, there is like extra bonus, there's like extra placebo effect, there's extra this, there's extra that. That is one reason why, to be honest, fascial stretch therapy is more effective, is because when someone else is touching you, it just makes it that much better to your body and your nervous system, and it seems to relax more. But yeah, we don't actually know for certain what a knot actually is, but you
Oh.
can think of it as a restriction that that muscle is having. And again, if we're thinking about fascial lines, it could be that that muscle is actually having an issue, could be something down the chain, but it is telling you something, right?
Yeah. No, I guess do we at least know why they form? Is it when we exceed the muscle's capacity to do exercise, or Is that really what causes it, or is it I guess makes
I would
sense.
say, like, you can think about, so if we think about how the wall arms slide, could be something that's supposed to qualify us for a really good bench press and a really good overhead press, and we don't have it, and we're doing that movement anyway. We're doing
Uh,
those movements that we
mm,
technically don't have
mm,
the mobility for. We can think about us going past our railing, right? We're going past our railing with that movement. The muscle is probably having a reaction to that, and it's getting tight, it's feeling restricted, it's trying to tell you something for sure. I will say, from one of my certifications, we talked about knots in terms of like, okay, we don't really know exactly what they are, but what do we do about them? It really liked rolling for knots, and it liked rolling again below a 5 out of 10 on the pain scale, and it liked multiple times per day rather than you hammering it for like an hour, basically. Like
yeah,
do it for multiple times a day, 10 to 12 passes, and you might notice it get better. But again, like I'd say, like a lot of people have knots in their upper back. It's probably because they're not having the flexibility up here and here to do some of the movements that they're doing. It could also be postural, right? Where it's like you're spending all your time in that one position and you need to
yeah,
move more.
yeah,
So your best posture is your next posture is one of my favorite quotes. It takes the onus off of like, oh, you need to have perfect posture. Because even if you have perfect posture for your whole workday, you would still probably feel a little sore after. So just keeping movement through your day.
yeah.
Does that
Okay.
help?
Yes, it helps. I mean, it's certainly it's fascinating that we still don't know why what a knot is, right? There's so many things we don't know about the body. I mean, for with for sure what they are, right? It's impressive, but that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I see a question from Paul here. Burpees are brutally tough for me, and after doing thousands, they don't seem to get any easier. My only answer for lack of progression is flexibility. Any ideas how to improve this? Oh, as much as I hate burpees, they are actually one that requires quite a bit of flexibility. We can break it down right now, what you need to have better, Paul. First of all, burpees are hard, and again, it's one of those examples of an exercise that because it's not really working on your flexibility per se, like some other exercises do, it may not get better with you just doing it more often. But we want to think that we need to have a really strong forward fold and like hip back to get to the ground, right? From there, we need to have good hip flexion and compression here. So we have this whole side getting stretched and this getting stretched. This has to be comfortable coming together. So our hip flexors. Then we hop out. This part's not too bad. But again, when we hop back together, our knees are so close to our chest. So that's called compression. That's all of this squeezing together. That actually might be really hard. One example of that, I do a handstand class actually, and we're big on compression, is being able to lift your leg up. I bet if you came to the ground, Paul, and you tried to lift your leg, it would suck. It would hurt. It would not be comfortable. It wouldn't get very high. So for you, it seems like depending on where, and again, if we got together, we could really break down what maybe the issue is with your burpee. It's probably hamstring flexibility and back flexibility, and it's hip flexor strength and its shortest range of motion to feel comfortable there. Does
Perfect.
that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, I can always send you a little email or something with some extra.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Sorry, if I may, I just want to go back to this concept that flexibility is really about the nervous system because that's very counterintuitive, right? So if I can't stretch beyond a certain threshold, uh, what you're telling us is, well, that's because I guess my nervous system has been trained to go past that threshold. Um, but is it also because the muscle is just not strong enough, though? That's where I'm kind of caught. Like, is it obviously maybe a relationship between both, right? Because it's not. I don't think it's just about the nervous system kind of allowing it, is it? Or is it really just about the nervous system, regardless of the strength component?
I mean, you like those are tied together. So
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it
being
makes
being
sense.
strong in a new range happens because like you were able to connect with it, right? One thing that we actually would see when people start strength training programs is that they may not get strong as quickly. A lot of the adaptations are neural in that people just get better at doing the movements. And your brain, your muscles get better at talking to your spinal cord to make those things happen. So they're not mutually exclusive, but it just goes to show that like you need to work on like strength in these ranges you aren't using. That's where like the PNFs come in, or when we're doing some of our mobility stuff and we're like lifting our legs ourselves, like
Mm,
Adam really likes these ones, right? Where you're here and you're really trying to move in it yourself. This is you like building strength in these ranges, right?
yeah.
And one thing is that when we strength train, sometimes we skip ranges of motion as the weight gets heavier, right? And now we can't really do that same range of motion as strong because we've been skipping it for so long in some of our dedicated strength work. So I have met powerlifters who only practice their squat to just below the knee, which is where you need to make it for a powerlifting competition. They're looking for that nice flat line, that then their hips don't go all the way down after. They lose their body weight primal squat because they just
Um,
weren't using it anymore. And their
mhm.
their their body doesn't go there.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, in my case, I've noticed that we're doing more Supermans, right, in class now. With my arms stretched out, I just it's very hard for me to be able to lift my upper body when I have my arms stretched out. But if I put my arms back, I'm able to do it easier. I mean, it's not great, but I'm certainly able to lift my upper body a lot more than when I stretch my arms kind of out
Sure.
above me or in front of me. So is I guess that means that there's a mobility issue with my, is it the shoulders or the whole shoulder joint that is not allowing me to lift my upper body, I guess.
Are you tall?
Yes, very. Well,
That's your problem.
I
So
guess yes,
I want you to
6'1", 6'2".
right? So I want you to think that like if you're doing, say I'm doing a lateral arm raise and it gets really hard with my arm out to the side, I may like bend my arm because basically the farther um from the lever point that I am, the harder things become, right? The
Yes.
longer. So with your Superman, the progression for you could be like, okay, my arms are close and I'm going. My
Yeah.
arms
Oh,
come this far.
oh, I see.
Soon I take my arms all the way out. But I'd actually argue that that's a strength thing because you're just not used to extending your back with that much
Yeah.
weight. So you're right. When your arms are closer, your body's more compact. You're not having as much weight. Whereas as I come out, I have more weight. So
Yeah,
I'd
that makes
actually say
sense.
that that's a strength thing. And you should work on like arms close. And I know this is what I cued my lunchtime class. I was like, some of you should start here with your arms and even like keeping your legs down, right? But
Yeah.
with that arching, we don't do it often. So it makes
Yeah.
sense that like the hardest variation of it, your body didn't want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Paul, just going back to you, do you feel like those are your issues in the burpee? Do you feel like you kind of have trouble with getting down to the ground and getting your knees up as high as you need them to go?
Well, I've been testing this with the camera off. So, but no, like I seem to be able to do that motion okay with relative ease. I don't know what it is though. It feels like it's something once I'm on the ground, getting my knees up to my hands. There's got to be some more tension there on my lower back or something like that.
I mean, there is definitely a moment like when you do that jump, like, so you're here. It's like usually your chest lifts first and then you hop your legs.
Hmm.
So it's almost like the kipping pull-up action where you're arched and then you tuck
Hmm.
and then you tuck. And that is something that like you may need to work on specifically yourself because like we said about that ballistic stretching, like our bodies don't always love using speed as much as we want to be able to use speed. Sometimes we need extra techniques to like really get there without hurting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that it's tough with our specific issues because sometimes it's not mobility, sometimes it is coordination, sometimes it is strength. And we only really find out if we get assessed by a professional.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone feel like they want to share anything they thought was really interesting that maybe they didn't know before, or one of their takeaways from the workshop before we finish them?
The only other thing I might bring up, because I hear it a lot in the gym, I don't know if it's if different times throughout the year, but a lot of shoulder issues. And I find for me when we get into the cleans and some of those kind of things, I don't know, like I'm 50 years old, so it's like I just find like I have a lot of tension in my shoulders, and I've had Kyle look at me for something else, and then I mentioned that he's a chiropractor, but he would get in there and just kind of really stretch out the muscles in the shoulder, and I don't know how he's just so strong with his hands, and I'd feel really good after that, a couple sessions. But I'd be nice to be able to not have to do that on a regular basis and be able to manage this some way by myself. But it's a consistent theme, and I hear it a lot in the gym.
Yes. So I think that again, we're trying to do mobility in 15 minutes and we're mobilizing for full body. So we aren't doing enough shoulder mobility, probably for the majority of people, right? Everyone's different. Everyone has different restrictions. You can be restricted in your flexion, you can be restricted in your external rotation, and in combinations of those. You may also have issues getting your arm behind your back. And all of those things can impact your shoulders as we're doing lots of these different dynamic movements. So while flexibility training is something that strength can, like our strength movements can be helpful with, if we're doing dips and we want to do body weight dips, but we're only doing like this range, it's really not going to help with our flexibility. And at the same time, if we barely had enough flexibility to take our arm behind us in the first place, and we're just going there anyway, that's not going to be helpful. So specifically with cleans, right? This action actually requires quite a bit of lat flexibility, tricep flexibility, and wrist flexibility. Think about how often we're stretching our triceps and our wrists specifically. And actually, if it wasn't for the gym being really loud on Monday, I'd have the video finished, but I need to go work on it more. I am going to post on the Instagram account 3 stretches, one for each of those areas to help people with their catch positions. But from there, after you catch it, you're going overhead. And this overhead position is quite a bit of mobility. Like I said, strength training with range of motion can help, but when, a lot of our strength work is like maybe not preceded by some extra flexibility movements, it can be difficult to actually have that range without specific stretches for it. So I'm a huge fan of like the banded lat stretch. If I were you, I'd show up to class 5 minutes early and I would do a shoulder routine, basically, of stretch my lat, stretch my chest, make sure I hit a bunch of different angles there, maybe even stretch the trap, because it can be hard in that 15 minutes to get enough for everybody's shoulders, and everybody's shoulders are at different places.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope one of your takeaways is to just be more committed to your own flexibility.
Yeah.
And you can choose whatever you need from that. It could be 30 to 60 seconds of static stretching if you think you like that better. It can be the dynamic work, but a lot of these stretches where you're taking your arm over your head, you need to be stretching that like 3 times a day. Or not 3 times a day, 3 times a week. 3 times a week for it to be effective and for you to really notice it help.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you said the same thing I would notice when I'm doing kipping pull-ups. It's almost to the point where I can't do them anymore. It was so excited because I figured them out finally. And
Aw.
now it feels like I'm going to dislocate my shoulder that if I keep on doing them. So it's probably the same thing. I just got to work on it a lot more than what I
Yeah.
am now.
Yeah, and if you're feeling your low back, like in that moment where you're pushing up, like I bet you should do like some Sphinx, some Cobra, some up dogs, like those positions, which I'll just show really quickly. So again, think of your Superman as like the hardest one of the back extensions. If I wanted to start with back extension, I might just start with my feet staying on the ground and exhaling as I lift just my chest. From there, I might work on taking my arms further. From there, I might add the lifting of the legs, but it's a progression, right? For like that back and like feeling that, Sphinx is like a little bit of back arch while I squeeze my butt. Up dog, my hands are further than my shoulders, but notice how I got more. Sorry, that's Cobra. Cobra. And up dog would be my hands by my ribs and I come up, and that's a lot more. So it's just like working on those positions like in a stretching environment before you go and do them with velocity is important. With speed, with velocity, very important.
Indeed.
And yeah, I think that's the challenge sometimes, right? Is that like if our strength training can be flexibility training, it's best when it's controlled, when it focuses on the stretch. A lot of the movements we're having issues with are movements where we're moving fast and we need to be really coordinated, or we're catching the weight. So that's where some of those challenges come in, and that's where doing the specific mobility work can be really helpful. So like I said, keep an eye on the Facebook, Instagram, or whatever it is, the Instagram. I'm going to post some of my favorite stretches for those areas that I think that people are having issues with. And like I said, it's hard to fit it all into an hour class. So be diligent, work on it on your own.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, I wish you
Thanks,
guys,
Reed.
thank you. I wish you guys luck on your mobility assessments. Like I said, if you ever want to talk more about it with me, I obviously love to chat mobility. So thank you
Sounds
guys
good.
for showing up
Thank you
in
so much.
person. Thank you. I hope you
Thanks,
learned
Reed.
something. Thank
Yes,
you. Take
Definitely
very
did.
care.
helpful.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome. All right. You guys have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay. Stop share. And there.
Because Magic is a Canadian brand, maybe one day I will have it. We sell differently. Like we go, okay, what are we here to help fix? Realistically, there's usually like problems with the windows or problems with the security, and we're in there trying to solve an issue. Because Magic is a Canadian brand, I definitely feel like we can address the concerns because we live in the climate. We deal with it in our own home. We build stuff and we use for ourselves.